Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a really expansive set of sources. It's this long, free-ranging conversation about the fractures we're seeing, across modern society.
Yeah, it's quite a pile of material.
Yeah,
And it digs into why everything feels so polarized, the way language is used, and how our sort of basic understanding of reality seem to be shifting.
exactly. So our mission here is to unpack that, to really look at how information flows now, how political talk works, how cultural values are changing, and figure out why things get so heated, so confrontational.
hmm We're basically trying to pull out the main ways manipulation happens and understand this crisis where we can't even agree on, well, what's real anymore.
You mentioned an interesting framing from the material before we started.
Oh, right. It uses this analogy of societal global warming. Like the temperature of public life is shooting up so fast, it's destabilizing everything.
Ah, okay. So people feel forced to kind of seek shelter, find a different mental space.
Yeah, exactly. Metaphorically move north to find a more stable climate just to, stay functional. It's a strong image for the pressure people feel.
Okay, let's dive into that. The sources start with a really specific example from the UK, which is quite telling, isn't it? This business of tracking non-crime hate incidents.
Yes. And just to be clear for you listening, this isn't about actual crimes. The police are literally recording instances where someone expresses something deemed hateful, even if no law was broken.
Which is a huge expansion of state oversight, right, into just opinions.
Absolutely. It's administrative creep. The material we looked at puts this squarely in what it colorfully calls the uber woke era.
Meaning,
Well, a time when maybe laws were put on the books quite quickly, perhaps without full definition, leaving police to interpret and enforce these, very subjective social lines.
and this kind of environment, the source suggests, showed how easily things could be manipulated. There was that really cynical observation they mentioned.
Ah, the lizard person elite view. Yeah, that was um, obviously hyperbole. But the point was about observing how easy it became to get ordinary folks to, quote, admit to things they'd never admitted to before.
Like snitching on neighbors during lockdown for taking a second walk or something minor like that.
Exactly. It showed this quick compliance, maybe driven by fear, maybe social pressure, and that connects right into the online world.
Which brings us to the data shift, the 2014 thing.
Right. This is where it gets analytical. The claim is that around 2014, during Obama's second term, something changed globally. You saw this measurable spike online in searches and the use of really polarized words.
Like racism.
Racism was the
Oh,
key example given. Yeah,
yeah.
global spike. And the sources point the finger pretty directly at social media algorithms as the main driver for this global pattern.
Okay, so is that correlation, or did they offer proof of causation? How did the algorithms cause it?
Well, the argument is rooted in how the platforms themselves fundamentally changed. Before roughly 2014, they were more about connecting you with friends, right? Static networks. Then the goal shifted. It became all about maximizing engagement time, keeping you on the platform longer.
And what keeps people glued to the screen?
Conflict, emotion,
Yeah.
terror, sadness, rage. The analysis suggests the algorithms actively started seeking out and pushing content that provoked strong emotional reactions. Globally.
So it's less about going online to learn something.
And more about getting that quick emotional jolt to feel, as the source puts it, alive,
Yeah.
especially if, everyday life feels maybe a bit comfortable but dull.
Wow. So the algorithm deliberately creates this feedback loop.
Pretty much. A loop of negativity, strife, outrage. It learns what kind of outrage keeps you hooked longest and feeds you more of it.
That's quite a mechanism.
It is.
Yeah.
And the material mentions some really disturbing examples like footage of assassinations in Colombia apparently becoming high engagement viral content.
Good grief.
It suggests the system is now basically profiting from our innate human tendency towards drama and conflict. Polarization isn't just a side effect, it's the business model.
Okay, so the algorithms pump out rage and division. Then what happens? Where does that energy go?
Straight into our language, particularly political language. That's the next step.
Weaponized words, basically.
Exactly. The source talks a lot about rhetoric that uses terms like Nazi or fascist, almost casually, and it stresses the danger there.
Which is?
Well, when you label opponents with terms linked to, historical atrocities, you're not just disagreeing, you're essentially putting a target on them, taking them outside the realm of legitimate debate.
And implying they need to be stopped, not persuaded.
Right. It creates this expectation that you have to stand and fight. It's moving from argument into potentially incitement.
Which then raises that whole issue of bias in how this stuff is policed. Who gets a pass and who gets punished.
The sources highlighted some pretty stark inconsistencies, especially examples from the UK again.
Like the Graham Linehan case.
Yeah. He was involved in that very heated trans rights debate and got arrested over tweets the source described as relatively innocuous about gender identity.
Mm.
But
then, contrasting that, you had Zara Sultana, a member of parliament,
cited in the material for apparently advocating to fight them in the streets,
right,
which was seemingly considered acceptable rhetoric because of her political alignment, on the far left.
And wasn't there another really extreme example?
Oh, yeah. The man who apparently said, quote, "We need to slit the throat of the far right," and was found not guilty.
Wow. So the implication is the law bends depending on your politics.
That's the core suggestion. That political identity, not necessarily the objective content of the speech, is starting to dictate what's permissible.
Which seems to feed into this idea of protests themselves being, well, not always what they seem.
Precisely. It connects directly. The material really digs into modern protests, suggesting many are kind of orchestrated illusions, designed for maximum media splash, maximum digital impact.
They mentioned Extinction Rebellion, right? How maybe only, say, 40 people could generate this huge online buzz.
Yeah, because the images get shared stripped of context. It looked like a massive movement online, even if the actual numbers on the ground are small.
And the organization behind it, often not quite grassroots.
That's another point. If you look closely, the signs are often, professionally made. And these groups with very appealing names, like Stand Up to Racism.
Yeah.
Well, the analysis in the source material suggested that often behind the scenes, you find smaller, more ideologically driven groups, like the Revolutionary Socialist Workers' Party in that case, actually doing the organizing, providing the structure.
Giving it an appearance of broad support it might not actually have organically.
Right. And this sometimes shows up in, like, a knowledge gap among the actual protesters.
Ah, that anecdote about the signs.
That was very telling, yeah. Interviewers apparently asked people holding signs mentioning socialist intifada, which, traditionally means armed uprising.
Right.
What it meant. And many just didn't know. They didn't realize the phrase implied armed conflict.
Or that other test about asking people about human rights for the unborn, and they just walk away.
Yeah. It suggests maybe the commitment is sometimes more about the slogan, the feeling, the chanting, rather than a deep, thought-through position.
And the chanting itself has a function.
Absolutely. It's rhythmic, it's musical, it gets the crowd emotionally charged. There's that need for emotional engagement again. But the content of the chants, the source argues, can often be, quote, utterly nonsensical.
Like, we won't be free until Palestine is free.
That was the example used. Powerful rhythm, gets people chanting together, but the logical link for someone protesting in, say, London or New York, the source questioned that directly. It's about the feeling, not always the meaning.
Okay, so we've got algorithms feeding rage, which fuels weaponized language, which manifests in these sometimes manufactured conflicts. It feels like underneath it all is this breakdown in just agreeing on basic reality.
That's exactly where the analysis leads. This whole polarization crisis seems built on a deeper crisis of shared reality, what is fundamentally true.
The source pointed to some almost surreal examples, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The point about the UK Supreme Court having to literally debate basic anatomy, the source put it crudely, whether boys have certain parts and girls have others, just to deal with the cultural arguments around biological sex, it highlights the level of induced confusion.
And that moment in the U.S. Supreme Court confirmation hearings?
With Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, yeah. Being asked, what is a woman? And replying, I'm not a biologist.
The source called that
playing the dumbest game that's ever been played. Basically, a calculated evasion of objective reality, seemingly for political or ideological reasons.
But this game, as they call it, has real-world impacts, particularly when rights conflict.
Huge impacts. The source really honed in on the cognitive dissonance here. You have activists fighting hard against a patriarchal rape culture. While at the same time, the argument goes, they're enabling predatory biological males to access women's private spaces, prisons, shelters, changing rooms, just by claiming a female identity.
The Willy Wonka golden ticket phrase was used, I think.
It was, and the specific dangers listed were pretty stark. Biological males dominating women's sports, taking over leadership in women's groups, and even violence or threats against women who object, who then get labeled TERFs.
So the core point is, if you abandon objective reality, you can't actually balance competing rights claims. Society needs some agreed-upon facts to function.
Exactly. the social contract phrase.
Hmm.
Which brings us back to the individual,
Yeah.
If everything feels unstable and confusing, where do people find any sense of peace or certainty?
Right. So how does this massive societal churn connect back to like individual psychology or well-being?
Well, the source material offers a pretty direct link. It
Hmm.
suggests that maybe some people are drawn to creating or amplifying these big external conflicts because they lack, well, real problems,
Yeah.
or perhaps a sense of deep purpose in their own lives.
Interesting. So creating external drama fills an internal void.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
And the antidote proposed is purpose. Finding something you're passionate about, actually getting good at it, developing what they called hunter's persistence.
Meaning,
Like the focus and dedication needed to achieve something difficult, something long-term. That sense of purpose, they argue, is kind of the antidote to the bitterness and resentment that gets amplified online. It's basic mental health infrastructure, really.
and finding purpose often links to having some kind of belief system, doesn't it?
It does. The sources drew a contrast there. On one hand, they observed a kind of contentment and stability in devoutly religious people.
Mhm.
They mentioned a Muslim friend as an example, who could face huge life challenges but felt fundamentally grounded, believing everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
And contrasted that with what they saw as a sort of chronic lack of peace, maybe more anxiety or uncertainty within parts of the new atheist movement, for example.
So the takeaway is that society needs some common ground, some shared stories or beliefs to hold on to.
Yeah, whether those are religious or philosophical or even strong civic narratives.
Yeah.
Useful stories, the source called them. When that shared belief structure crumbles and algorithms are just feeding us individualized rage instead.
Then the only certainty left is conflict itself.
Precisely. The crisis of shared reality is, at its heart, a crisis of shared meaning and purpose. #tag outro.
So wrapping this up for you, the picture painted by our sources is of a society really churning, driven by these profit-hungry algorithms feasting on outrage.
Amplified by political language designed to create conflict, not understanding.
And all underpinned by this deep, unsettling crisis of shared meaning, leaving people kind of scrambling for certainty in a very uncertain world.
And it's interesting, this modern condition, the constant self-focus, the narcissism may be amplified by our devices, always looking down at our phones.
Our own reflections, in a way.
Exactly. The source material explicitly connected that to ancient warnings,
Yeah.
specifically the Greek myth of Narcissus,
Who fell in love with his own reflection.
and was basically obliterated by it, stared until he wasted away. A pretty stark warning about excessive self-regard, isn't it?
It really is. Which leads to that final, quite provocative thought from the source material, this idea of civilization itself being cyclical.
Yeah, the notion that humans invent incredible things, reach some peak of complexity, and then somehow manage to destroy it all.
Ending up back as cave people, needing to rebuild from scratch.
It's a recurring theme in history and myth. And when you look at the current technological acceleration we touched on, AI developing what looks like a survival instinct in tests, AI making music stars, even reports of AI encouraging self-harm.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this current breakdown, this intense polarization and confusion, just the usual messy prelude to another societal reset?
Or is this time different? Can we actually learn to handle this unprecedented technological power, the algorithms, the AI, without letting it tear apart the shared reality we need to cooperate, maybe even survive?
Finding that common ground, navigating this new landscape, that really is the deep dive, isn't it?
It certainly is.